This is the Martial Art Review, June 2nd, 2011, for a review essay on the 2009 film Up. I'm William Parker Marshall. Receiving a Best Picture nomination with the newly expanded 10 nominees for the 82nd Academy Awards, Up was the only completely animated film to receive a nomination that year, and one of the true worthy contenders for the prize. This Disney-Pixar co-production is unlike its predecessors in terms of what you would expect, instead developing a very touching story that is relevant to those of us who are at an age beyond childhood. In Up, retired balloon salesman Carl Fredricksen is considered a menace to society and forced to vacate his property to an old folks' home. Instead, he follows his lifelong dream of visiting Paradise Falls, based on Angel Falls, by attaching thousands of balloons to his house, making it fly, and steers a course for South America. After his house is airborne, a young boy in need of a merit badge for helping the elderly is stranded on his porch, only to assist Fredricksen on his journey. The following is intended for those who have seen the film. New computer-animated films are often met with a bias by the moviegoer before being screened, namely the anticipation that the film will be both childish and populist in appeal, stereotypes derived from when Toy Story became the introduction and standard. The two presentiments are not without merit. Most completely CGI pictures are marketed toward the younger generation and aim for a rating of G or PG, desired to maximize the target audience. The problem with this projection is that it closes most to the potential for understanding the work as an expression of art, however popular in appeal. Opening the Cannes Film Festival, winning numerous awards including Best Animated Picture at the Oscars, among others, and glowing reviews from the top critics, Up is a profound artistic achievement. Up begins with a movie within a movie, a newsreel/travelogue of the adventures of explorer Charles Muntz, the film's antagonist, in South America. There is always something special and meaning when an animated movie uses live-action camera techniques. The camera cranes out of the footage of Muntz's Zeppelin, the spirit of adventure, to reveal the real world by the purple curtains adorning the sides of the screen, thus the movie within the movie. As the camera cranes down to reveal the audience, a cut is followed containing the same continuous downward camera movement to reveal the young protagonist sitting in his chair, looking up in awe at his hero. Carl wears the same hat and goggles, and by the movement, there is an understanding, for the threshold between the ideal fantasy of the young Carl and his reality is the tale told between the two screens. The influence Charles Muntz has over the young Carl Fredricksen, especially after Muntz puts on his flying goggles, that Carl quickly imitates, along with their combined hand gesture of a thumbs up, is certain. The discredited Muntz avows for a return with a live specimen of the monster he discovered, and as his Zeppelin flies into the distance, the young Carl Fredricksen dissolves into himself with a balloon whereon is written "The Spirit of Adventure," pretending to be Muntz. The dissolve is quick, and easily passes without much afterthought, but it itself outlines how the film manages to capture the economy of expression through time perfectly. The transformation of seeing what one wants to be to pretending to be that person happens in an instant. The vicarious experience continues with Carl as he vocalizes the sound effects of the Zeppelin as he zooms down the street, bringing with him the voice of the newsreel narrator who romanticizes and exaggerates Carl's actions as feats to behold. Carl hopping over a sidewalk crack becomes Muntz hurdling the Grand Canyon. When Carl attempts to actually hurdle a tree stump only to fail, the narrator exclaims, "He hurdles Mount Everest!" only to comically reform the statement into, "He goes around Mount Everest! Is there nothing he cannot do?" The mundane of the everyday setting has been transformed by Carl's imagination into the dangerous and exotic environments of adventure that he as Muntz bravely explores. From here the camera tilts up to the sky, only to have the film's title fade in. Here we look up at Up. There are many titles whose meaning is of particular relevance to the work, and with a title like Up, that features a flying house by balloons attached, it would not be wrong to take the title Up at face value. But as we look up to the title, one thinks of looking up to as a phrase, admiration of someone else for who they are and or who we want to be. As Carl looks up to Muntz, and as Russell looks up to Carl, the theme of ascension takes on a double meaning in Carl's development in becoming who he has always wanted to be, himself, rather than becoming someone else. At the end of the film, Carl becomes the mentor figure for Russell. Russell's father, whose absence at the Wilderness Explorers ceremony is noted, is thankfully replaced by Carl. His role in the boy's life is set when Carl fills the void of one of the only memories Russell has of his father, by eating ice cream and seeing who can count the most cars of a certain color. Returning to the prologue, Carl's dream suddenly fades when the narrator's voice becomes coupled with Ellie's exclamatory repetition of Muntz's phrase, "Adventure is out there," from within the derelict house that will later come to serve as the plot vehicle. As he enters the house, where on the door is written "The Spirit of Adventure," and hears her own self-narration, Carl discovers what many of us search for in life, a person who shares our dreams. She pilots the house by rope and a bicycle wheel, steering toward a picture she has drawn of Paradise Falls. The aligned visions are confirmed as Carl glances on the wall, where newspaper clippings of Muntz's adventures proudly hang. When Ellie discovers Carl and quickly reprimands him as fast as she accepts him into her club, which now consists of the two of them, by safety pinning a grape soda bottle top to serve as a medal, Carl is left speechless. When she introduces herself and leads him out of the room, Carl's emotional attraction is confirmed, for the instant she touches him, he turns a bright red as the film's piano motif subtly plays. After Carl falls when trying to retrieve his balloon, he finds himself in bed with a cast, reading in the dark. Ellie climbs up to his window and sends him his balloon attached to a stick that drifts over and gives him a mighty scare. This becomes a symbol of their communication, later repeated in the prologue when Carl sends the stick back to her on a balloon, while Ellie lies in the hospital. In both images, the stick and the balloon, perhaps a foreshadow of the house, are by windows, and interrupt the other from their thoughts of adventure. One is night, the other day, a strange inversion when considering the youth and elderly. This form of communication is, if anything, beyond sweet. When the young Ellie invites herself in to share the adventure book, the book itself contains the dreams of her life, and on her first opening the book, the section entitled "Stuff I'm Going to Do" is indicative of unlived life. At the same time, during the last scene in which she is alive, she closes the book and the symbol is confirmed. When Carl opens the book later, the space is filled with photographs of the events that defined and shaped her life. When blank, they are life that is yet to be lived, and when full, the pages are life spent. When she dies in the hospital, the tragedy that the bought tickets to Venezuela, their goal to reach Paradise Falls, will never be lived, is apparent. After the young Ellie shows Carl the book, she makes him promise that he will take them there. Carl swears by crossing his heart and thus giving the incentive that will begin his journey. This is repeated by the later Carl after they establish the change jar for Paradise Falls. The following montage is one of the most touching moments in all of animation history. It has been described as reminiscent of Chaplin, and although bearing resemblance in silent style, I would argue the similarity lies within the feelings that both evoke. The understanding of the human condition, when confronted with images rather than words, surrounded in music, brings a tear to the eye that one never intended to be spent on animated characters. This is one of the few instances that contemporary cinema has returned to its roots by delivering a wordless scene full of emotion that time, a native to the film medium, achieves by information of image alone. Wordless and coupled with music, the scene brings forth expression deeply felt. As soon as Ellie is out of Carl's window, we cut to their future wedding. There is no explanation necessary after witnessing their childhood connection. They return to the old house to fix it up and live in, perhaps a nod to Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life. In 3 shots, we see the house transform into the colorful dream home it will be known by throughout the rest of the film. Yet the richness of Carl and Ellie's relationship becomes the fodder that turns Carl into a grumpy old man by her absence. A youthful Ellie ascending a hill while an out-of-breath Carl is struggling to keep up is later contradicted by the same scene where we see Carl at the top of the hill before Ellie collapses, presumably due to her illness. The activity of duly cleaning the windows while looking at each other from both sides becomes a synecdoche, reminding us of her when Carl cleans the windows by himself. The action, now only performed by Carl alone, is a reminder to the absent part of their whole. When they are on a picnic, through use of the Kuleshov effect, we cut away to the clouds where one dissolves into the recognizable shape of a turtle. Cutting back to Ellie, we recognize the cloud transformation coming from her projection. Then another cloud transforms into a winged elephant. When Carl sees a cloud that could resemble a baby, we cut back to Ellie, who agrees, and after another cut to the clouds, we see all of them transform into babies. This was a very clever editing technique, because through our projection of what we associate to be the image that they see, we see her projection, and it becomes an effect within an effect, signifying through a look and a half-smile at Carl the desire to start a family. Immediately in the next scene, we discover she can't, and the emphasis on their life turns towards saving up money to visit Paradise Falls. The jar where they keep their loose change becomes the symbol of their savings, only to be broken when the various adversities of life strikes. Time passes in the variety of Carl's ties, and they become old, and the jar becomes tucked away on the bookshelf, perhaps suggesting that they never could afford the trip, and so it slipped out of their minds. Finally, the ending of the montage includes another genius dissolve of a shot where Carl walks up to the altar with a balloon, turns into Carl walking up the steps to his house. The feeling he holds, continuous. For character dualities, Carl and Muntz are not typical. When Muntz flies in a blimp, Carl flies in a house. Muntz has a pack of talking dogs at his command. Carl hates dogs until Doug, who after proving himself to be good and loyal, changes his mind. The dogs themselves are remarkably accurate toward what anyone would perceive how a dog might think. I am reminded of Laska in Anna Karenina, in the scenes where Tolstoy vocalizes the dog's thoughts, heightening the scene with perspective. The dogs in Up are completely for comedic effect, and though both different in tone, both are yet seemingly accurate in perspective. What separates Muntz from Carl is the differences in goals. Muntz's conception of success is by bringing back Kevin to correct the accusations of fraud against his name. Carl's desire is upholding his oath to Ellie by going to the falls. The dream is further completed by Carl bringing the house to the falls and bringing to life the picture above the mantelpiece. After the struggle, when Muntz falls to his death, and the now empty house drifts back into the clouds, Russell apologizes, to which Carl replies, "It's just a house." This is a profound moment for Carl's character, who has transcended his grumpiness, understanding that the physical house itself is indeed just a house. But he is utterly wrong when we look at the movie Up, as the house is obviously more than a house. The house itself is dreamlike, as it is the vehicle for Carl's dream. The image itself, a flying house, could be interpreted as a release onto freedom. The fact that it's an old man at the helm could be the significant departure of the middle class from the rules that they have followed for so long to accomplish the dreams they never could afford. The freedom of not being grounded or bound by conventions, laws, or forced removal to an old folks' home is partly what is so transcendent about the house. The house flies, literally, into the heavens, where Carl is searching for Ellie. Figuratively, he has gone to heaven to look for her, bringing the house with him, before taking the final flight of death. He talks to her as if she is still alive. "Don't you worry, Ellie. We'll get our house over there," he promises her as they walk the house to the falls, and when the house is there, completing the picture above the mantel, he journeys for the first time past the Stuff I'm Going to Do page in the adventure book, only to find the pictures of their shared life. The book ends with, "Thanks for the adventure, now go have a new one," prompting him, Carl, to go along with Russell to save Kevin. Between the lines, she says in her own unique way, "Thank you for the life you spent with me. Keep living." The final shot of the film is the house sitting on the edge of Paradise Falls, just like in their picture. The dream complete, we are reminded in the words of Charles Muntz, adventure is out there.